thank you to the people who have joined. My name's Helen Murray. I'm the Training Partnerships Manager from Thornfields, part of SPM. And we'd like to welcome you along today to our webinar from Stayce Gibson, our expert, who is just going to give us some pointers and hints and tips on coping with Christmas, because often it can be a stressful time. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to be recording this session. If you do need to leave for whatever reason, that's absolutely fine. You can pick up the recording, which we'll share with you by email, but it will be on YouTube in a little while after we've had a chance to edit it. We are not going to produce a guide for this session, but we will send a copy of the slides out to everybody who's registered. So you can get that afterwards. And if you've got any questions, then you can submit them in the chat. And Stacey and I will keep an eye on the chat and we'll ask them as we go along if they're appropriate, or if not, we'll have a questions and answers sessions at the end. If you do have any thoughts or experiences, then you can put your hand up and I can unmute your microphone, or you can put it in the chat and I'll ask it on your behalf as well. So it's a great idea. If you've got any best practice or ways of coping yourself, feel free to share them. At the end of the session, I will share a link in the chat just for some feedback. It's just a couple of questions to make sure that we're hitting the mark with these webinars. We're giving out information that you want to hear, and just to help us shape future webinars as well. So I'm going to hand over to Stacey now, and she's going to take us through the next 30 minutes. So thank you very much, Stacey.
Thank you, Helen. Hey guys. Okay, so this is Coping with Christmas. So first of all, thank you so much, everybody, for joining onto this webinar. So I'm going to be leading us through it, and I really would like to encourage you all to interact as much as you can, or just as much as you possibly feel comfortable to. We'll try and run it as smoothly as possible. Okay, so let's get to it. It would be ideal, by the way, if you have a notepad and a pen. Nothing that you have to share if you don't want to, but just for your own notes and to reflect back on would be wise. Okay, so Helen already mentioned the housekeeping, so just leave if you need to. If you want to pause and come back, you're welcome to. If anything makes you feel uncomfortable, please just take care of yourself first. And introductions, my name is Stacey, if you didn't catch it. And again, thank you all for being here. So let's just jump in. All right, so I thought it would be wise just to kind of let you know what's going to go on in this workshop in the next 30 minutes. And some things I've written down, what you can expect is a little self-exploration. We're going to do some honest self-reflecting, hopefully. There will be some tips on setting boundaries, and hopefully I can provide you with some tools and techniques to help you feel confident with what boundaries you want to set this Christmas or around this time of year. And hopefully just to make you feel more confident in trusting your own decisions that you're going to make, okay, ahead of today. It would be wise for you to also have a little think about what you would like to take from this workshop. And it can be anything from a tool or a technique, maybe more of an open mind, anything that you can think of, and feel free to put that in the chat. If you have anything you know that you want to take from today's workshop, please share it with us so we can mention that. Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, and what you'll need your notepad for and your pen, is we're going to talk through expectations. And I've just put here the 4 tabs that I want you to think about, which is external, internal, whether they're wanted or unwanted. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore the external ones first. So if you just write on your pad external expectations in a column, if you like, and I want you to try and think about the things that you feel you may have to do that you do not enjoy, or that maybe you feel anxious about, or you tend to dread. It may be a lot of expectations that you didn't set to yourself or that were set by others. It may be ones that you're seeing through social media, ones set by family members, any that you can think of at all coming from an external perspective, okay, ones that are expected of you. And I have a few examples if it will help. So some of mine are decorating the house to the maximum that I possibly can, although it's not necessary half the time. Another one is getting dressed up on Christmas Day. I have quite a few loved ones that do that, and I want to play the part and look nice, but I never can be bothered half the time. And overdoing it on the present buying. Obviously, we want to get our children as much as possible, and it tends to go over the top. And these are some of the things that I will feel each Christmas that possibly are not my own expectation. I'm just maybe comparing myself to the outside world. So if you have any that springs to mind, again, please share in the chat. Let us know what external expectations you may be able to come up with. And I'll just give you 30 seconds, maybe just to write in a few or just jot one or two down. It can just be one, if that's all, before we move on to internal.
Feel free to put anything in the chat just so others can see them. They might have the same kind of thoughts, but just haven't popped into their mind. So Yvonne said having several presents for our children. That's a big one, I think. Mine is expense around the gifts as well. So just everything's so expensive now, and they've got to have the best of the same that they want.
Okay, thank you guys. Okay,
yeah,
so go ahead. Sorry, Helen.
Sorry, somebody else has put keeping the house clean and cooking, a good Christmas meal for the in-laws, food and drinks, definitely expensive. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
That's got to be a common one, cleaning the house. Okay, all right. So we're going to shift onto internal expectations now. Sometimes it can take a bit of focus to dictate what's external and what's coming from you personally. So what I've written down to help you pinpoint is not necessarily something that you desire, but it's something that you hold yourself to. It may not be something that you necessarily enjoy, but you feel like it's a tradition that you want to keep or that you must keep. Maybe it's one you've picked up from your own parents or grandparents. And again, it can be anything that you can think of. Some examples of my own is baking a cake. That's definitely an internal one for me. That doesn't come from any outside factor. It's just one that I used to do every year. And now that I'm changing and I don't wish to do that every year, I definitely hold myself to that and think to myself thoughts like, oh, you don't even bake a cake anymore. And then the self-critique starts. So that's like an internal expectation for me. And also games with the family. Sometimes sometimes I will watch a Christmas movie and some people are playing games while others are drinking and while others are talking, and I always tend to want to be really highly involved in the games. Again, although I may not even always enjoy it, it's something I hold myself to. So these are probably feeling a little bit lighter than the external ones, but any internal ones that you can think of at all as well, put in a separate column. And then what we're going to do after this is we're just going to hopefully bring your expectations down and hold you to less stress. So if you can share any internal ones you have that you hold yourself to, then feel free to share. I'll just give you 30 seconds again to jot anything down.
Again, if anybody wants to put any in the chat. Mine is around New Year's Eve. I feel like there's always, you've got to expect to do something to celebrate, but actually I just want to stay in with the dogs and watch a movie and have an early night. So, yeah. If anybody would like to put anything in the chat. Yeah, somebody said feel the same about New Year's Eve. Doing a roast dinner on Christmas Eve. Wow, that's brave as well. Seeing all of the friends and family, buying all of the family gifts. In reality, it's expensive and just want more time for themselves. Expectation to be cheerful and happy on New Year's Eve, and they just want to go to bed. Yeah. Same, I get you there. Worries about dogs behaving when they have guests. That's actually, good point.
Yeah, that's great ones. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're just going to do something really fast and bold. We're going to take a look at those two columns and we are just going to write down out of all of them, internal and external, just one that you enjoy. And it may not be any that you think, I really, really enjoy that. But if you had to pick one out of all the ones you've written, whether you've written 10 or 5 or just 3, just pick one that you enjoy or that you tend to enjoy the most out of what your options are. And alongside that, if you wish to add any on, if you're somebody that puts a lot of pressure on yourself, you can add 2 more tops. You can't have any more than 3. And the idea is that when you pick one today or 3 tops, maybe that's all you can take into this Christmas. You may have to change some people's visions of what they expected from you this Christmas. But the idea is that if you really want to bring expectations down that others may have of you and that you may hold yourself to, let's just bring it right down. And you're just going to make a personal commitment to doing just that one. Or again, if you want to push yourself further, no more than 3 for this year. And you can evaluate how you feel about that after. Okay, before we move on to the next slide, if anybody wants to share the one they've chose, the one that they're going to hold themselves to this year, please feel free. I'll just give you 20 to 30 seconds again, and then we'll move on. Mine, by the way, is I am going to bake a cake. I am going to do it this year.
Well done, Stacey.
Thanks.
Mine is I probably still will buy the expensive gifts. But they'll make me happy when they see that they've got what they wanted.
Yeah.
This is a good one. Instead of buying all of the adults in the family gifts, they're going to bake cookies and shortbread. That's a good idea. Thank you, Natalie. Doing a really good Christmas clean, and they'll be satisfied when it's finished.
Lovely. Yeah. That's
brilliant.
Great. Okay.
I'm going to add that to my list as well.
Oh, there you go. You got 2 now, Helen. Be careful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
All right. Okay. So we're going to quickly jump on to feelings around Christmas time. Feelings tends to be a big one. Somebody mentioned earlier this pressure of feeling cheerful and jolly when actually you don't. And I think it's really important to take care of yourself around that. So this is just a quick technique that I put together. It may work for you. Hopefully it will work for you. Feel free to change the wording if you want to. So I titled it Feelings Around Christmas Time, taken the first letter of each word in order to help us remember this tool, this technique. Okay, so the 4 points that we're going to focus on is the feeling, how we act when we tend to feel that feeling, how we wish to be. So we're going to use the word control. You could use the word change. And the last one is test. So I've got my notepad. Grab yours. Just identify one feeling. It can be a feeling that you always have every Christmas or around the holidays. It can be something that you don't have yet, but you anticipate you will feel. Anything from anxiety to feeling lonely, knowing that you always get stressed. So stressed would be the one. Sad. I don't know, very hypersensitive to everything around you, whatever it is. And again, feel free, if you want to share with us as we go through this, please feel free to write in the chat. I've just used the example of lonely. So that's the feeling I'm going to use as an example, is lonely. And that would tick off your first bullet point, okay? Just you identifying the feeling. And then what we're going to do is move on to the A, act. I just want you to jot down how you tend to act when you're feeling this feeling that you've chosen to identify. So my feeling is lonely. And how I've put I may tend to act when I'm feeling lonely is actually I isolate myself more. I then become very envious of those that have loved ones around them. And that may be just a couple of examples of how I may act when feeling lonely. So identify your feeling first, and then write down some behaviors that you may tend to go through when you feel that feeling. Next, we're going to move on to control, or again, you can, if you don't like the word control, you can use the word change. You're going to take hold of this now, and you're going to take that feeling and identify how you wish to control this feeling, how you wish to change. If the way that I act with loneliness is to isolate myself and become more envious, then actually what I want to do, what I want to change is to be around more people. I want to change the isolation phase, and I want to choose to be around more people. So I need to take control of that feeling. And that's going to be the first step into the last one, which is the test. So the T standing for test is you actually now putting it into action. It will definitely take some of you out of your comfort zone, no doubt. So you have to do it at your own limit in regards to your self-care. But if I am feeling lonely and I tend to isolate myself, and what I want to do is change that and be around more people, then my test will be to reach out. My test will be to actually speak out and speak to somebody and ask them if they want to meet up with me this Christmas and spend some time with me. Maybe I might reach out and ask if I can attend an event or if I'd be welcome somewhere. And that's just the technique there. So it isn't necessarily easy, but it could definitely change the game in regards to what you may have been expecting back from other humans. We're always a lot nicer than we tend to think. So does anybody have anything that they'd like to share? If they could just share their feeling, how they act, what they want to change, and maybe a test that they're going to choose to do this Christmas, if that sounds appealing to you. I'll give you 60 seconds on this one just to give you some more time if you want to share anything. That'd be great. Thank you.
I've got a couple of responses here, Stacey. So Anna said she has anxiety and stress, and she tends to cover up the feelings and put on a front. But to change that feeling, sort of relax more, do some deep breaths, put less pressure on herself. That's a really good example. So Hakeem has said the feeling is overstimulation and slash boredom. So they act defensive and isolate. And to change that, they're going to find space and have alone time to decompress. And the test is to make family aware that this is what they need. I think that's, yeah, they're both brilliant examples. So thank you, both of you, for that. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Okay, lovely. All right.
I've got one more, sorry.
Okay.
So miserable and grouchy, they feel tired and withdrawn and quite low. And they're going to change or control that by trying to get into the festive spirit a bit more and let their feelings go. And joining a festive event with the family is something like ice skating. And then I've got one more. So somebody said that they feel inadequate, and what they're going to do to act on that, or how they would like to act, is by overcompensating and being too jolly. So to control that or change that is list all the things that they get right, and the test would be to have a more balanced perspective.
Oh, lovely. That's great.
Yeah.
Well done. That's really good. Thanks, guys. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Guys, if we're moving and you were still planning to share, please still do. Don't stop writing if we've moved on. If you want to share, please feel free. Okay, so we've moved on to our boundary slide. So I thought one way to dive into this would be to ask how the word boundaries just make you feel. I know some people feel very comfortable with it, and for others, it can cause your heart to beat faster. So when I say the word boundaries, just tell me how you feel. How does it make you feel? Some of you might feel safe. Some of you might hate that word. What do you associate that word with? I'm just going to give you 30 seconds again, just to throw anything you can at me in regards to how the word boundaries make you feel. And you can also add in if you think you're good at them. There's another bullet point there. Am I good at them? Yeah, feel free to say whether you think you're good at them alongside how they make you feel. Might be a pattern that we might see there.
Yeah. So the word boundary makes them feel safe. Somebody said that it makes them that they're good at them, or better than they used to be. Sorry, and somebody else says they're not good at them. Yeah.
Okay.
A safety net. They have to work on it, but worthwhile. Sometimes having boundaries is being a killjoy. And others have said, yeah, boundaries are good to have in place, much better than they used to be, work in progress, feel a little anxious about upsetting people. And somebody said that, it's, if you make them clear, then there's an understanding of what is expected and needed.
Lovely. Okay, great. That perfectly takes us into our next slide, actually. Okay, so it may be that people that tend to not like the word boundaries will not like this next slide, and people that like the word boundaries will like this next slide. But based on a little bit of research, ideally boundaries are good for us. That is the potential factor there, that they are good for us. So if we do not have boundaries, what we tend to experience, and it tends to be more so that we experience it around holidays, we could possibly experience burnout, anger, resentment. We may tend to abandon routine, have poor mental health with stress or illness. We may witness unwanted behaviors in ourselves or feelings of guilt. We may be finding ourselves giving apologies. And if we do have them, the idea is that it reduces chaos in our lives and it helps us make more meaningful and direct decisions. It helps us to have effective communication and know our limits. Therefore, we can set realistic expectations. It will enhance our self-esteem, honor your needs. It's a high standard of self-care and it's a healthy model of well-being. So that's just something to take on board if you are great with boundaries and you want to get better or just keep practicing them. If you are no good with boundaries but you would like to learn how to set some, just these things to take on board may be the benefit or the hindrance of having them or not having them. So the next slide I thought would be useful just to share some tips, because I know for some people, if they don't practice setting boundaries, especially for anybody that may be a people pleaser, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, it may feel more difficult to know where to start. So with these, feel free to just do one of them. It's not the case of you have to do all these tips. You can simply start just by doing one of them. So start by respecting other people's boundaries. You'll find it extremely self-reflective. If somebody tells you what they do and don't want, or a joke they don't wish for you to make this year, or a comment on their clothing, or anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, if you really try and respect that, you'll find it is then easier to set your own boundaries. So put your own needs first is another one. Don't be fearful of others' reactions, which is a difficult one, but a really important one, because it can sway the decision that you want to make based on what others' judgments are of you. And I think it's very important to remember your own judgment of you here will always be the most significant. Remember, you set boundaries to feel respected, safe, and to help maintain your relationship. So anytime you're struggling with setting boundaries, try and remember that. And talk to somebody who will respect or possibly share the same boundary you have, who is in alignment with you or on board with the boundary you have, because they can help support you with that if you are struggling. It's not always easy. It can bring a scare on in regards to the way that relationships may be going, but it will soon start to become clear who is going to respect your boundaries that you're making for yourself and who's not, and then easier for you to make choices about where you want to go with that. So that's just a little something on boundaries. I hope that's enough. Please feel free to share anything that you want to. Let me just take that back, actually. Please feel free to share anything that you want to in regards to boundaries, or anything that you feel you're struggling with around boundaries, or any advice to others. And again, I'll just give 30 seconds space here just for anybody that wants to say anything about boundaries or ask anything around boundaries.
Keep practicing, somebody said, Stacey. Yeah, do keep practicing. Debbie said she really struggles to put herself first.
Okay. That's great, guys. Thank you for sharing that. Hopefully you can practice putting yourself first this year.
Somebody else has just said if they feel stressed out in one area of their life, it spills out into all the other areas and gets into a negative spiral.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
It can happen a lot, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully setting some boundaries, again, even if you just start by setting one, can hopefully help you feel like each part of your life is different departments, that you're in control of each one, and maybe setting a boundary on each one or on each department might help, or just one overall. But keep the faith with that. Hopefully you can experience less spiraling. Okay, all right, we're going to move on to one of the last slides, and it is a sensitive one. It's coping with grief at Christmas time. It's ultimately coping with grief in general, but we're going to focus it around Christmas time, since that is the point of this presentation. But I just mean you may be able to relate to it in all times of the year. So in regards to it being Christmas time and grief, it can heighten the feeling of loss. So I think when our hearts long to be like loved in the same ways that we've had before with those people when they were here, it heightens in special occasions and on holidays that we want them here even more. And it can cause a lot of pain and suffering. So ideally, this slide is just to help be honest about that, share it in a safe space. Feel free to be vulnerable in the next 5 minutes. We're going to start to identify some things that can happen when we're dealing with grief, and we're not in the most settled place of it yet. And then we're just going to share some things that you can do around that time to get you through that process, because it may not, be stopping around this time of year, and you may find it more of a struggle. So let's dive into this. Please remember, if you feel anything that's making you feel triggered or uncomfortable, you can pause. You can say anything in the chat if you like. And yeah, just try and make it as safe space as possible for yourself. Okay. So let's go through them. So when you are coping with grief, what you may find is that you have a tendency to burst into tears at any given moment. And the tips we're going to give to that is to be kind to yourself all the time. Try your hardest not to self-criticize when you are bursting into tears, and be as compassionate as possible. Again, it will really help you set a boundary on what you will accept from others as well. You should have the permission and the space to burst into tears at any given time without having to apologize. So the compassion is really important there. I think it is a good tool. I've read, and in regards to support groups and knowing that people do this, it's really well shared, I think, to dedicate a time to remember and to grieve a person on purpose. So some people do it with music. They may listen to music for a certain amount of time each day and just choose to cry or break down while that's on, or just, see if that happens organically. Some people express it with writing. And they will purposely write about the feeling of loss at that time, or about that person that they have lost. And some people just simply light a candle and choose to consciously think about that person nonstop, or maybe even talk about that person. And it's just an active way to choose to grieve without feeling any kind of guilt, or that kind of thing. So again, if you are going for anything, or you have been, or you remember a time when you were there, when you were bursting into tears while going through some grief, feel free to share with us how you may have overcome that, or what you did in that time. I'll go on to the next ones, but Helen, feel free to interrupt me if somebody writes something.
Yeah, I just want to say, Stacey, that we're really up to time now, so we'll need to whiz through these. If anybody does need to leave, you can catch the end on the recording. But yeah, if you want to we need to kind of wrap it up, and then we can have a little bit of time of questions and answers at the end.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so the next one is feeling angry or anxious. So useful tips would be to plan a comfortable Christmas and give yourself permission to do what you want this year. Step away from the traditions or the rituals if they feel difficult. And I think, like somebody had said earlier, Hakeem, in the group chat, share that with people, share that you're going to be doing that, so you can set the expectation and the boundary, and you can take care of yourself in regards to feeling anxious or angry. Not eating or sleeping, make a regular routine for yourself. Even if sleeping and eating, it has to become your life goals, do that. Ask others for help in regards to food prep and food shops, and download some apps which are known to help with sleep, maybe a useful tip. And the last one is breathlessness and panic attacks. And we was going to do a breathing technique here, but I don't think we have time. So it's just about focusing on your breathing as much as you can. If you find yourself on the verge of any kind of breathlessness or shortness of breath, a panic attack, hold on to something. Chewing gum is really useful. Focus on chewing the gum. Remind yourself you're in a safe space. Wiggle your toes on the ground or stamp your feet to just feel grounded. And that's it, really. That is our tips in regards to that. Obviously, it's something that we cannot take away in regards to the suffering. So we're just going to try and help as much as we possibly can. So thank you so much for that. The last slide is just me thanking you for joining. Again, if you want to share anything, if you are not in a rush, please just share something that you may take from the workshop if you want to, or something that you may take into the future, or just how you're feeling, if you feel this workshop has helped you in any way, or what you're feeling now to go on to the rest of your day with. But thank you so much. I appreciate all your time, and thank you for listening to me, and I hope you liked it.
Thank you so much, Stacey. I did just put in the chat before you went on to your last slide that the information you've given out today is purely for information and shouldn't be interpreted as medical advice, but I just did pop that in the chat. So if anybody's got any questions and they don't need to shoot off, we'll stay back a few moments.